guys, firstly, let me apologise about the rather unflattering camera mode. Yeah, I couldn't be arsed looking for something to put the iPad on, so I've just got it sitting on the table. So anyway, how the hell are you? I don't mind admitting I'm actually recording this on Wednesday, because by the time you watch this, well, I suppose it depends when you actually watch it. If you're watching this on Friday, I will be, or hopefully I'll be up in Oban, which is a delightful little sort of seaside town up in the very sort of north of Scotland. I left tomorrow, or yesterday, depending on when you're watching this. I left on Thursday. I'm up here until Saturday, just getting a wee break. It's actually the first holiday where I've actually gone somewhere for, I would probably say about 8 years possibly. Yeah, it's been that long. I've never actually had a proper holiday for a long time. So anyway, excuse me a little second. Cheers. My God, I'll just keep my arm there because it hides my fat belly. So anyway, listen, I hope you're all wonderful. I'm good. Had a mega busy week at work, but really enjoying the job. Don't mind admitting that. Like any time when you start a new job, you sort of start to kind of wonder, how are things going to go? How am I going to get on, etc, etc. But I've got to say, I think I'm starting to find my feet, and more importantly, I'm getting to know everybody and really enjoying it. So absolutely no regrets about taking the job on, which is good. So yeah, what have I been doing this week? Apart from watching Scotland tumble out of Euro 20. Now, take a note for your uncle, Mainmeister. Pub quiz time. In 20 years' time, there's going to be a question that's going to say, what was unusual about Euro 2020? And of course the answer is, it was actually played in 2021. So there you go, don't say I didn't give you that big fat tip. Scotland, what can I say? I mean, we got beat by the Czech Republic. We got well beaten by them, to be fair. We absolutely gubbed England. We should have beaten England. We got a point, but yeah, we were certainly the better team. And then we got humped by Croatia. Now, I heard an interesting fact. Croatia only celebrated their 20th anniversary, I think it was this year. So they're a very new country, and they've only got 4 million people. So, they're even smaller than Scotland. I think the Scottish population is 9 million. They've got 4 million. And considering they got to the final of the World Cup, they're doing phenomenally well for a small country. But getting back to Scotland, you know what? It was 22 years ago was the last time we qualified for a tournament. It was 1998 World Cup. So yeah, it was a long time ago when we last qualified for a tournament. So you can if you're not Scottish, you can hopefully understand why there was excitement when we qualified for this tournament. There's people who are 22 years old would never have known Scotland to actually get to a major tournament. So myself, like everybody else, we were stupidly excited. It was great to get to watch them play in a tournament. But after losing the first game, I think we had high hopes that we were going to win the first game. We lost it. Then we were thinking, well, if we can get anything from the English game, excuse me, I need to learn to breathe when I'm talking, because that's what makes me yawn. Then we thought, well, if we can get a point from England, then we're still in a fighting chance. And we did that, and like I said, to be fair, I don't think anyone would disagree that Scotland were the better team. England were rubbish, but Scotland played really well. So we were unlucky not to take 3 points. But the problem with Scotland is you can play great. It doesn't matter how fantastic you play. It's like darts. It doesn't matter if you get 180s every single time. If you can't score a goal or you can't hit a double, then it's a waste of time. And that's the problem with Scotland. We're unable to score goals. We had chances to win the game against Czechoslovakia. We certainly had loads of chances to win against England, and we didn't take them. If we'd beaten England, then we wouldn't have been going through because we lost 2 games. But if we'd been able to get a point off Czechoslovakia, if we'd scored, I mean, we had chances against Croatia, but Croatia were way the better team. They're a far better team, far better quality. I mean, Scotland, I think, were third bottom seeds out of the whole, was it 32 teams, or no, it's more than that actually, I think. So we were the third bottom place team. Croatia got to the final of World Cup 4 years ago, whatever it was, 5, I don't know when it was, doesn't matter. So, you know, being Scottish, you're used to being disappointed. It's one of the things. We eat haggis, we drink iron brew, we get used to getting disappointed when it comes to football. Not so much rugby, because rugby we've had more success with rugby, I think, than we have with football. I don't think we have ever, and this is a fact, I don't think Scotland have ever actually qualified, got out a stage group of any tournament, and we've qualified for about 4 or 5 World Cups in the trot, to the point we took it for granted they were going to qualify, and then obviously we had a really dry barren period, i.e. 22 years. But yet Scotland have never actually managed to get out a group stage. So, you know what, the thing about Scotland is we don't expect anything, and so when we're disappointed, it doesn't matter. Somebody who's used to taking a kicking, when they get another kicking, it doesn't bother them because we're used to it, and that's a thing that comes with the territory of being Scottish. But I'd be lying if I said I'm glad we're out. I mean, that would be a ridiculous thing to do. I mean, even if we did get to the next stage, you know, we would have probably got beat. I don't know who we would be playing if we had got to the next stage, but we're never going to win it, you know. So I enjoyed it. It just means now I can support every team that's playing England. I am joking, of course, not really. But anyway, yeah, I do wish England and Wales all the very best for the next couple of rounds. So anyway, listen, I've got some questions, but I was sitting thinking to myself last night. Pardon, this is so rude. I'm not even that tired. It's because I don't draw breath. I talk constantly. I don't actually stop to breathe. What I was thinking, I've got some questions, but I was thinking to myself, what can I talk about? You know, I've ran out of everything. So what I thought to myself was, I am just going to talk about the ZX Spectrum. Now I know you're thinking, well, why don't you talk about the C64, because that's your first computer. I will talk about the C64. I'll do that next week or the week after. I'll talk about the Amstrad. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to waffle about a certain home computer. So I'm going to start off with the ZX Spectrum. When I, back in 1983, when I became aware, excuse me a second, when I became aware of computers, I bought a magazine called, and now I'm not going to, in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually turn the TV off, because I've got the TV on and it's really bright and it's kind of annoying me. Back in 1983 when I got this magazine called Home Computer Course, and it had all these different home computers. Nowadays, kids will be thinking, what do you mean different computers? You've got a PC, you've got an Apple Mac, that is it. Well kids, I'm going to give you a history lesson. Back in 1983, you had the Atari 800, you had the Atari 400, you had the Dragon 32, you had the Dragon 64, you had the Lynx, you had the Colour Genie, you had the Epson thing, a built-in screen, you had the Commodore VIC-20, you had the Commodore 64, you had the Commodore PET, you had the ZX Spectrum 16K, you had the ZX Spectrum 48K, you had, well, the Amstrad wasn't out at that point. What else? you had the Sword M5, you had the Computer's Lynx, you had the Tatung Einstein, I think it was called, you had the Acorn Electron, you had the Acorn BBC Model A, you had the Acorn Model B, you had the Acorn Atom, you had the Auric, you had the Auric Atmos, you had the Jupiter Ace, plus there was probably other ones. So you had this absolutely plethora or quintessential banquet of home computers that you could pick from. Now, if this magazine, this particular magazine, it rated each computer. It didn't score it, but what it gave you a little kind of summary, and it gave you the pluses and the cons. What does con mean? What does con mean? I mean, con, I know what con means to kind of dupe somebody. Is dupe a word? Yeah, pros and cons. What is con? What is it short for? If you know, let me know. Anyway, yeah, pros and cons, and I had the price. So I got this magazine and I literally read it from front to back to front, and front to back again, times 10. And in the it was a centrefold, and I'm not going to be cheeky, it's not a page 3, it's a centrefold. It had all these computers, and it says it kind of gave you the pros and cons of every one. Now, the one that I wanted was either the BBC, the Atari, or the Commodore 64. Now, the Atari was ridiculously expensive. The BBC was, even if my mum and dad had won the pools, they were never going to spend £500 on a BBC. So the one I really wanted was the Commodore 64, but even then that was, I don't know what it was, £300, £250, £300. There was no way I was going to get it. So my mum and dad said to me, right, it's your birthday, son, we'll buy you a computer. Now I don't know why, but I think they said to me, I think I said, oh, can I come? And they went, no, it's a surprise. Now when your parents say it's a surprise, you know they're not going to get what you want. Or at least my mum and dad wouldn't get me what I want. So anyway, I said, look, could I maybe get the Spectrum? Because I knew there was no point in asking for the Commodore 64 because it was too expensive. My mum and dad simply couldn't afford it. So, yeah, I said, could I get the Spectrum? Even the Spectrum 16K. So anyway, they came back with the Texas. Oh, I forgot to mention that one. Yeah, they came back with the Texas TI Texas Instruments 199/4A, and my dad said the reason he picked that one was because it looked the nicest, which is fair enough, but the problem is my dad didn't really think about the lack of software. So anyway, I got this machine for my birthday, and it came with no software. I think they bought me a tape recorder, I think they did, but I had to use the living room TV. So there was no software for it, you couldn't buy any software for it, at least I couldn't find any. And the only game that I got was one that I ordered it probably from Computing Video Games, and it was a game called Core. And it was written in BASIC, and you basically controlled the letter V, and you had to get your V past all the W's, which were killer bats or seagulls. The V was incidentally a bomb, and you had to navigate through the killer bats to the bottom to basically detonate the bomb, or the core, whatever it was. It was written in BASIC, and quite frankly it was shit with a capital SH, shit. It was awful. So anyway, that was the computer I had. The highlight of that computer was my mate was at Newcastle Polytechnic, and he was studying computer programming, and he came home one summer. It must have been shortly after, because I didn't have the computer for long. He came home and he came to my bit one day, and he programmed, when I say a Defender clone, that would be stretching the truth. He programmed a defender ship which could move up and down. It didn't move left and right, but it could move up and down, and I think you could turn. Could you? No, I think it just. I think it faced to the right, and but the thing is, he programmed the defender laser. Now you've seen defender, when you fire, you get this little laser bolt that shoots out and it kind of breaks up. And he managed to get that to absolute perfection, and I'm sure he even programmed some noise, but there was no game to it. All I could do was move up and down and fire at nothing. But you know what, that was more entertaining than this basic game that I bought. So I basically had to make do. Do you hear the pun there? Basically, I basically had to make do with this basic game or basic program that my mate had written. Until I started a part-time job in 1983, and I got a Commodore 64 and I never looked back. So anyway, getting back to on topic, Spectrums, my experience with Spectrum. So the only experience I had of the Spectrum was when I used to go up to John Menzies, and this was before Virgin and any of these kind of places existed, and they always had all the computer game shops back in the day. They always had these computers running a game, and the Spectrum always had, it was like School Days, what else? It had Bugaboo the Flea, which was a kind of earlier game. It had Manic Miner. It always had these games running in kind of demo mode, and so that was the only experience I had of the Spectrum. I never ever played one. Now, when I had my C64, we used to go to the computer club. Now, I'm not going to go into any details because that's for when I get into my computer 64 waffle. But we used to go to the computer club, and my mate Grant, it was every Wednesday. I think it was like 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. Sometimes, if I was lucky, my dad would. I'd passed my driving test at that point. My dad would sometimes let me borrow the car, but it was on a very, very odd occasion. I mean, back in the 80s, you couldn't afford. I passed my test in 1985, and it wasn't until 3 years later when I could afford a car. It was like £500 I paid for a Mark II Escort, which incidentally I discovered I had a huge hole in the floor, and I sold it to my mate. But to be fair, I did actually tell him. He was quite happy to buy it, knowing it was a hole. So anyway, I used to go to the computer club every Wednesday, and I would lug my C64 plus the TV, and my mate Grant had a Spectrum. So we used to go to this computer club, and Grant was the only person that had the Spectrum. But anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead a wee bit. It would be in 1983, I got pals with Grant through school, and it was initially through drama. We both used to do drama, and then we got talking, and it turns out that he owned a Spectrum and I owned a Commodore 64. So that kind of founded the friendship. So I remember going to his house one day, and I saw his Spectrum, and to say I was underwhelmed would be an understatement of the year. I was completely underwhelmed, and when I saw him playing, I don't know what game it was, I just thought, my God, that looks awful. I had a Commodore 64, which at that point the games, the SID chip wasn't really getting used properly. But I was playing games like Fort Apocalypse, Seamus, Spy Hunter, and what else? Blue Max. I was playing all these Bruce Lee, Beachhead. I was playing all these early C64 games, and they were bloody awesome. They were absolutely awesome. And then my mate loaded up Bruce Lee in the Spectrum, and I just thought, oh my God, that is awful. Then he loaded up Manic Miner, and it was like Colour Clash Central, and instead of having proper stereo sound, he had this little beeper, buzzer, whatever you want to call it. It was no better than like my Casio phone, my Casio watch. It was awful. So I just thought the Spectrum was garbage. But my mate seemed to like it, and you know what, that was fine. I mean, anytime I went to his house, he would load up a game, and you know, we used to go to the computer club, and it was just basically pirating games, copying games. So he would come back on a Wednesday night with a C90 ram filled with all these games, and we would sit and he would try and load them up. And when he'd get a game to load, he'd write the wee tape counter like Manic Miner 13 to 47. I don't know. Can't even think of any other games. Underworld 47 to 92. So he would write down all these games that he'd get working, and then I would go down to his house and he would load up games in the Spectrum, and he'd say to me, you know, do you want a shot of Daley Thompson's Decathlon? And I remember seeing Daley Thompson's Decathlon in the Spectrum, and I just thought, my God, that is crap. It is absolute garbage compared to my, my all singing, all dancing C64. So, you know, I used to say to him, no, you're okay. And there was really never a game that I wanted to play. I just thought, it just looks crap. And I think the big thing as well is the Spectrum it only had a single. I know you could buy adapters, but he only had, was it the Kempston interface or something, and you could only get one joystick working, so you didn't get to play two-player games. So any game that he played was a one-player, so it was like, do you want a shot? And I'd be like, nah. I mean, there was very, very few games, if any, that I played and I thought, oh, I like that. I wasn't interested in playing it. Then he would come to my house and we would play Exploding Fist, we would play international soccer, we would play summer games, you know, all these cracking games with two players. Whereas his Spectrum, it was just a single joystick. So I grew up, my teens, I really was completely underwhelmed with the Spectrum. I had no interest in the Spectrum until, I'm trying to think, when would it be? It would be the Commodore Amiga days, 1992, 1990. No, what am I talking about? 1989. And I remember getting, it was like Amiga Power or something like that, or was it Amiga Format? I can't remember. And there was an advert at the back, and it was called "Revisit Your Youth. Replay ZX Spectrum games on your Amiga, 60 games," and it was like £4.99. So I'm like, what the hell is this? And I thought, and it says like, you know, I think that was the first time I'd ever seen the word emulate. I didn't know what emulate meant until I got this disc. So I posted a cheque. If you don't know what a cheque is, go and speak to your granny. I posted the cheque off for £4.99. And then about a week later, a floppy disk dropped through the letterbox. Put the disk into the Amiga, and I had to run this thing called a ZX Spectrum program, whatever it was. And then I loaded Manic Miner, and I was like, wow. Now, granted, the game was probably running at about 50% speed, so it was like slow motion. But you know what? That didn't matter. Here was me playing a Spectrum game on my Amiga, and I was like, wow, I didn't even realise that was possible. The problem was it was slow motion, so the novelty quickly kind of wore thin. You know, playing games at half speed wasn't much fun, so I quickly kind of forgot about emulating. I mean, I then saw an emulator for the C64, and to be fair, it wasn't much better. If anything, I think it was even worse. It was slower than the Spectrum emulator. So I kind of quickly forgot all about the C64 and Spectrum until I got my first PC. And again, there was magazine discs giving away free. I mean, this was before the internet. Giving away free programs, and one of them was a Spectrum emulator. I can't remember for the life of me what it was called. And I started playing Spectrum games, but the thing is, the PC had the power to play emulators at full speed. So I started to play Spectrum games, got a Commodore 64 game emulator. So that really kind ignited the interest in these old systems. Then it came to, when would it be, 2002, 2003. One of the guys in Yak Yak, which was a Jeff Minter website, still goes to this day, still got a forum. He put a post up saying he was giving away all these old computers, and he had this massive list of systems, home computers, that he was giving away. Now, you're probably thinking now, wait a minute, these computers go for hundreds of pounds, and you'd be right, but you know what, this guy, back then, nobody was really interested in them, apart from nerds and people who kind of had been collecting them for years. So this guy said, look, rather than getting a few quid for them on eBay, I would much rather house them to people that want them. So he says, let me know what you want and I'll see what I can do. Excuse me. So I said, oh, can I get a BBC? I think it was a VIC-20. And there was another machine which I cannot remember for the life of me what it was. Can't remember. So I got these 3 computers, and the thing was, I didn't have any. It was a BBC Master, and I had no way of playing any games. And it's the same with the VIC-20. I basically had these 3 machines, which I could do nothing with, because I didn't even realise that these machines still had support in eBay. So I had these 3 machines. And then when I started looking in but what that did was, it made me think, hang on a second, I'm going to see if I can get another Commodore 64. So I went on eBay, and sure enough, there was a Commodore 64 for like probably £9.99. So I bought that. Oh, wait a minute, let's get an Atari. Bought that, let's get a Spectrum. So within probably a couple of years, I had amassed quite a collection of home systems. Now, at the moment, you know, we're going through a real resurgence of, retro is mega popular, and, you know, systems, C64s, Spectrums, they go for daft money now. I mean, some of these rare computers like the Sword and the Computer Lynx and Atari 800, they go for like 300-400 quid, you know, because they are becoming very collectible. So at that point, I started to amass all these systems. Then I realised that you could get things on SD card, micro SD cards. You could get these little plug-in devices which allowed you to play games. So I got one for the Spectrum. In fact, very quickly I got what was called a recreated Spectrum. It's called the Just Specky. Now, some clever person or persons basically rebuilt the Spectrum, and they put it into a proper ZX81. In fact, no, I tell a lie, I had to do that myself. Yeah, I got this bare bone motherboard, but it had a built-in SD card. It had 128k. So, and it also had a joystick port as well. And all you had to do was basically put that inside a 48k Spectrum. So I did that. I mean, even me, who's an absolute tech monkey, and I mean that in a derogatory sense, I can't, I'm completely thick when it comes to stuff like that. I got this Spectrum, and over the last probably 10 years, through emulators, probably more so emulators, because although I've got all the original hardware, I don't use it as often. I have now, over the last 10 years, I have grown so affectionately towards the Spectrum. I will never, if somebody was to say to me, the Spectrum is shit, I'll tell them that they're a complete arsehole, because the Spectrum is not shit. Yeah, 17-year-old me thought it was shit back then, but that's because I've never actually played it. Now, I mean, as much as I still think the C64 is the best home computer, for lots of different reasons, I have got so much love for the Spectrum. I mean, there's lots of games, if I was to play it, even if it did come out on the C64, I would rather play the Spectrum. Manic Miner for starters. I can't think, my mind's gone completely blank, but there are loads of games, Cybernoid, games like that. There's loads and loads of games. If I was to play it, I would play it on the Spectrum. Even in an emulator, I'd rather play it in the Spectrum, just because the Spectrum, it's quintessentially Spectrum-esque. It's got the little beepy, farty little sound effects. It's a wonderful machine. Excuse me. I mean, if it wasn't for the Spectrum, I honestly believe that we wouldn't have the industry we've got now in the UK, because the Spectrum, I was watching Bedrooms to Billions recently, and is it Steve Wahid, I think it was, he programmed for Imagine and Ocean. He said that other machines like the C64, the Atari, whatever, they all have limitations. They have limitations on like, they have dedicated chips, etc, etc. And so there was like limitations, whereas the Spectrum, it was basically a raw machine with a keyboard. And so people made their own boundaries. There was no such thing as a boundary with the Spectrum, because it just didn't exist. It was like completely open source. And so that pushed people to push the Spectrum to see what it could do. And some of the games that came out for the Spectrum are just phenomenal. I mean, like Chase HQ, I know that's the kind of the one that everybody talks about. Chase HQ and the Spectrum is a phenomenal piece of programming. Some of the games are just amazing. And when you look at some of the more modern games, I mean, they're still putting out games even now. They absolutely blow your mind. And don't get me wrong, it's the same with like the C64. There's some amazing games coming out for that now. But you know what, I absolutely adore my Spectrum. I did buy the Spectrum Next. Now, if I'm being honest, I'm not going to say it's a mistake, because I know I could probably sell it tomorrow for 400 quid. I'm not going to do that. I have not switched my Next on for months and months. Pretty much because I don't really know what to do with it. I can't program for Toffee, and I don't really know where to get software. If anybody has got a Spectrum Next, and can tell me a link, give me a link, put in a link, the comments down below. If they can tell me how I go about getting games to the Next, please let me know. I mean, the reason I hang on to it is I still think it's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's been made. It just looks amazing. I know it will appreciate. It's only going to keep going up in value. But lastly, it allows me to play Spectrum games plugged into an HD TV. It's been made with the modern TV in mind. So it's kind of future-proofing the Spectrum for me, which I think is wonderful, because you can play an original Spectrum and plug it into a composite or a SCART, whatever. But you know what? These old machines are never going to last. Quick little story. I saw an Atari Lynx Mark II on, it was Facebook a couple of days ago. So I went through at night and I bought it. It was like offers over £15, so I offered her 25 quid. So I got this beautiful looking Atari Lynx Mark II with 2 games and an official Atari Lynx cover. Now, to be fair, the woman did send me a little video of it running. Now, I very, very quickly looked at it on my phone. I thought, oh yeah, that's great. Then when I went to pick it up, she kind of showed me the system working, but I was in a hurry. I was kind of running late. So I said to her, oh no, that's fine. However, I've since discovered that when you switch it on, there are 2 little narrow black lines running horizontally across the screen. I've googled it. Apparently that's very common. It's I think it either needs its capacitors replaced, which I cannot do, or you can put a more modern screen into it. So yeah, that's a wee bit disappointing. So anyway, I paid £25 for it. Another slight hiccup is I noticed the gamepad seems to always move to the right. If you hold it to the left, it will move to the left. If you take your finger off it, it kind of moves to the right. So it's probably an easy fix. And also the battery case is missing, the battery back, I should say, or battery cover. So anyway, if anybody is interested in buying it off me, I mean, I'm sure I could probably sell it on eBay or Gumtree or Facebook. It'd probably, you know, sell it for more money, even with these little flaws, because it's. I've got to say the condition is in beautiful condition. The screen looks really, and you know, there doesn't appear to be many scratches, which when you consider how old it is pretty phenomenal. The screen itself looks nice. It's bright, it's vibrant, apart from these two little black lines. And the sound is really loud and crystal clear. So it's a shame because I says cosmetically it looks amazing. So if anybody is interested in buying it off me for £25 plus postage, unless you want to come and collect it, then let me know. If I don't get anyone interested, then I'll just put it on Gumtree or something. I'm sure I'll probably get 50 quid for it, whatever. But if somebody wants it for the price that I paid, I'm just looking to get my money back, 25 quid. If somebody's willing to give me 25 quid plus postage, it's probably going to cost 5 quid to post it. So probably 30 quid. Let me know. I'll even sign it if you want. Though there again, it's black, so I don't know how I'd sign it. Yeah, that's obviously going to make it depreciate in value. But seriously, if anyone's interested in it for 30 quid delivered, let me know. So anyway, yeah, my case in point is you can buy a piece of old hardware and then you find out that it stops working. So yeah, but getting back to Spectrum, like I says, I'm a massive fan of the Spectrum. I do play it. I do still play it. And I think it's an excellent machine. So anyway, listen, I'm going to have one drink of coffee, then I'm going to put my, I've got the questions on my TV. So let me just get the TV fired up to save me kind of. Right, hang on a little second. Let's just go to my Fire Stick. Mirror, there we go. In fact, I don't have to do that. Why am I doing that? All I have to do is come down and then I go Smart View, and then my my clever TV will just kick in. There we go. Right, excellent. Put it on TV. Bink. Right, and let me just go to the questions. So, right, anyway, let's get going. Claxon Cow is saying a change is as good as a rest. Absolutely. Or is it? I don't know. It might be the other way. Ms. Holly, go for it. Go for it. Go for it. You put your time and effort in. If we can and want to help by giving you an honest kickback, we can, or we now can. Plus, it makes those who use ad blockers feel less guilty at denying your ad revenue. Blush. Del Boy, great to see you back in your front. Alright, very good. I remember vividly selling my C64, which was an emotional time. On that note, I loaded my favourite games for what I thought was the last time. Do you remember your last day with your favourite 64, and can you remember what game or games you played? I've got to say, Del, I wasn't, because I sold my C64 in 1987. I'd got an Atari ST. Now I'm sure I bought my Atari ST because I bought my Atari ST in credit. I still had my C64. I bought the Atari ST. Why am I staring at the TV? I bought my Atari ST whilst I still had my C64, but I'd basically packed it away. Excuse me, I'd basically packed it away. Oh dear me, I've got hiccups now. Excuse me. I'd packed it away, so I wasn't fussed. I just stopped using it. I packed it away, and then I was trying to sell it. So now, as far as the last game that I played, Hang on a wee second. You're watching in multi-view. Do you want to exit and watch this in the full screen? Yes, let's go to exit. There we go. So no, I've got to be honest, I wasn't sad to see my C64 go. People would be going, you know, in hindsight, yeah, I should have been sad, but I wasn't, because I was getting this spankingly new 16-bit Atari ST. So no, I wasn't sad to see it go, I have to say, Dale. Panther UK, welcome back, Bearded Waffler. Cheers for the channel plug, mate. For the next waffle then, what do you think the most immersive retro game you played was? None of that modern bollocks, just the old 8-bit and 16-bit stuff. Right, 8-bit immersive. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I would say, I mean, in the C64, something like Forbidden Forest, you know, that was an awesome game. You really got dragged into the game. What else? I mean, adventure-wise, I wasn't really into adventure games. Yeah, something like I say, something like Forbidden Forest. I mean, there was other games, you know, that, you know, like summer games. I suppose I could even say things like summer games, because when me and my mates used to play summer games, you actually felt really proud when you won the skeet shooting and you got the national anthem. You actually used to feel quite proud. I always remember thinking, wow, how awesome must it be actually representing your country at the Olympics, getting to stand there whilst God Save the Queen played, you know. So yeah, I suppose games like summer games, things like not so much Daley Thompson's Decathlon, Activision Decathlon. Me and my mate absolutely used to pound the joystick silly playing these games, or playing that particular game. It was brilliant. So games like that, even things like Hustler, the pro game, you know, it's completely pants when you look at it now. But me and my mate, we used to play first to 100 frames, and you used to get so wrapped up in the game, you actually forgot you were playing a computer game. So yeah, that was kind of 8-bit. 16-bit, I think probably stuff like Sensible Soccer. Sensible Soccer became a religion. It became, you know, I just played it so much. I didn't play any other games for months and months and months and months. Yeah, I just became so wrapped up in the game. Just absolutely phenomenal. So anyway, Chris, thank you very much. Let's have a wee look. Colin Jones, Cowboy Games. You've reminded me to try Deadeye with my knob. I'm assuming Deadeye? I'm assuming you're talking about your spinner, possibly, Colin. I hope so. Another cowboy game I remember with unusual controls is Sheriff, an early arcade game with a spinner and a joystick. So another to try with my knob. Yeah, I thought it was called Boot Hill. I don't remember Sheriff. I thought it was Boot Hill. Yeah, that was the one I remember. Microsoft are making an announcement on the 24th, which is the day before the next waffle is due. So I'm going to push a prospective question on you. What do you think of their plans for the future of their very popular bloatware called Windows? I'll be honest, Colin, because I'm not a techie person, I think, I mean, Windows 98 was great. Or 95 wasn't bad. Windows 98 was great. Windows Millennium was horrendous. Windows ME was horrendous. Windows Vista was horrendous because it used to crash. It crashed continually. Windows XP was a good operating system. It was the first kind of most stable operating system. Though saying that, was it Windows 2000, which was kind of written more for, I think it was based on Windows NT. It wasn't that compatible with stuff, but it didn't really crash. But I spent half of the 90s or the 2000s installing Windows, because I would install Windows and then you'd get the blue screen of death and that was it, and you had to reinstall Windows. So yeah, Windows XP was the first sort of stable Windows. Then Vista came along, then Windows 7 was it? Windows 7 was excellent, Windows 8 not so much. Windows 10, I think Windows 10 is great. I know people criticise, Bill Gates and all the bloatware and that, but you know what? The thing is, PCs now are so powerful that it doesn't matter if you've got these processes running in the background. I'm not interested in playing modern games. Saying that, my PC is powerful enough that I can play modern games on their highest setting in VR and they play fine. So I don't have a problem with Windows. I'm just hoping that the next incarnation of Windows doesn't require 120 gig of memory, whatever. If that happens, I'll just stick with Windows 10 as long as I can. So from a personal point of view, Colin, I've not got any problem at all. Sir Lancelot, no mention of Gunsmoke for of course, Christ, how did I forget Gunsmoke? I completely forgot all about it. I love Gunsmoke, absolutely love it. Yeah, that is a great game. It's a really, really good. I probably actually prefer it. Nostalgia wise, when I didn't know what Gunsmoke was until I got MAME. From a nostalgia point of view, I'll always love Commando, but I think I prefer playing Gunsmoke. It's a great game. You really need a MAME cab. You need 3 buttons, and it is really difficult as well. But that's a great call. Right, next, not a question. This is Mad Commodore. Not a question. A cowboy game I recently revisited was C64 Law of the West. You know what? I've always been meaning to play that game, and I've never ever got round to playing it. It's a unique technical and artistic achievement with graphics by the most talented Mimi Doggett of Accolade. She also did Hardball, another example of C64 high-res bitmap graphics not being possible to replicate as well with NES, PC-DOS, CPC or Atari 100. It impressed me as much back then as Defender of the Crown, the daddy of all the interactive movie games for sure. Yeah, I've always been meaning to play that now. There are 5 replies. I'm just curious as to see what people were saying. An anonymous boozer is saying, I used to play that quite a lot back in the day. I always used to shoot the annoying kid. Mad Commodore says, did you have it on tape? I remember one try, one full tape load. Blimey. Anonymous boozer saying, no, I live in Canada. Cassettes as a medium pretty much went off favour here around the late 1984. Mad Commodore is saying here, on the disc version you can try again, on the tape version you have to turn off the C64, turn it back on, rewind the tape and load it all again. But I still played it loads. Anonymous boozer, that's why I always wished that Commodore would have put an auto reverse in their tape decks, or made them high-speed digital decks like the old Coleco Adam decks. Yeah, interesting stuff. Right, Mad Commodore again is saying here, question, I don't think you ever touched on the pros and cons of abandoning a channel to start a new one, or sticking with a channel stuck in YouTube algorithm non-promoted hell. After finally discovering the major factor that fuels the YouTube algorithm, and how the older the channel, the more impossible it is to make something of a decade channel like mine even appear in search results, I decided to abandon this channel for future uploads. My channel is stuck at a level which just doesn't work. A handful of regular watchers and views that are not worth the effort that goes into making real hardware type reviews, even for just C64 content. I'm soon going to be doing all sorts of other real hardware plus CRT TV based videos of 8 and 60-bit machines, so I need to reboot my YouTube presence, and the only way is a new channel. A bit pathetic, but this is why many popular channel owners have older abandoned channels. It would appear the YouTube algorithm is as unforgiving for old stuff as I am in my reviews of BBC Micro Palette Screen Mode crap C64 games. How do you feel about the bias and inflexible YouTube algorithm towards old channels that get stuck? Interesting point, Mad Commodore. You know what's interesting? I've noticed a thing with the sort of retro-based YouTube channels. Now I hope people don't mind me saying this, but my channel, Novabug's channel, Lactobacillus Prime, what do you call them? Oh bloody hell! I've forgotten. I completely. Lawn Boys Post 1975. Sorry, Dave. I completely couldn't remember your channel there. N Jenkin. There's lots of channels, retro channels, that are all about the same sort of number of what do you call it, subscribers. I mean, Steve Benway, he's on like 20,000. He's doing really well. Lawn Boys Post, he's on about 6,500. Lactobacillus Prime, he's on about 2,900. Novabug's on about 2,500. I'm on 2,300. I've noticed my subscriber numbers has barely moved in the last 6 months. Now, I've no idea. I don't really get into the nitty gritty about, this causes that and that causes this or whatever. But it's kind of weird. I have noticed that it seems that these channels seem to kind of peak. They seem to peak about the 2,500 and then they don't really move on. So I don't know, is that the algorithm? I've no idea. I don't know. But I mean, saying that, although I've got, I'm not going to say it's a small number. I mean, 3,500 is wonderful. I never imagined I would ever get that. But I'm lucky that I do get decent views on videos. I think I have got quite a good viewer base. It's the same people I think that kind of watch my videos, but I do still bring in other people, so I'm lucky. But as far as the old algorithm thing, I think YouTube definitely favour bigger channels. I mean, I've started putting more adverts on my channel. Obviously I've now started doing super chat on live streams, and I was kind of hoping that, whilst kind of helping me pay for my channel, I was thinking, is that going to kind of get my channel out there to more people? But I don't think that's the case. I don't know, but I think the bottom line is, Mad Commodore, the topic that we have, we're very niche. I mean, who watches a 53-year-old Scottish guy talking about old computer systems? It's never going to be mass market. It's never going to get thousands of views. If you're Kim Justice or Nostalgia Nerd or whatever, Ashens, and you're doing it full time, then you can afford to put more effort into making professional videos. I'll be honest, I would absolutely love to be able to do YouTube full time. Why wouldn't I? It's my hobby. I would love it if I could make enough money and I could give up my job and I could do YouTube full time. It's never going to happen. So I think you've just got to accept that it is what it is and enjoy it. So hang on a second. Is that Milfy Swinbuckle? Has he got the last? Yeah, the last question. Now, apologies by the way if people are posting questions tomorrow, maybe down the rabbit hole, because obviously I'm making this on Wednesday. So, right, Milfy Swinbuckle, question for the next waffle. If you could go back to one time in your life, preferably a gaming memory, though it's up to you, and watch it as it plays out as a spectator in a way that Scrooge did, but you've got full control, what part of your life would you revisit in this ghostly way? That's a really good question. Now, there's loads of things. I mean, the obvious I could say, well, mum and dad have both passed away. I would love to go back to 1985. In fact, you know what? I would go back to 1985 for lots of reasons. I was young. I had no stress or responsibilities. You know, I just started working. In fact, I would actually go back to before I was working full time. I would go back to when I was working part time in Woolco. I was driving a wee moped, loved that. I had a girlfriend, you know, I was 17, she was 15, it was great. You know, no pressure or anything. And more importantly, well, I mean, my mum and dad were both alive, which was obviously lovely. That was really nice. I'd give my right arm to talk to my mum and dad again, get to meet them again. But I do that in dreams. I firmly believe that when somebody passes away, dreams are the outlet for us to go and meet our parents again, meet people that you've lost. But yeah, it'd be nice to do that. It would be nice, I could go to the pub, I could listen to 80s music. I loved 80s music. I could rediscover all the old tunes all over again. Go to the pub, get drunk. But more importantly, could discover computer games for the first time. I would discover arcade games. I could go down to Blackpool. I could go back and play all the classic video games. Getting my C64, the excitement of going to the shop and buying Bruce Lee or buying Drop Zone or Exploding Fist or all these classic games. Yeah, getting to revisit 1985 would just be wonderful for so many reasons. But awesome question. Anyway, listen, that is almost an hour. I'm going to get going. Listen, I will be... I'm intending to be along on Sunday, probably 7 o'clock-ish. That's the important part. 7 o'clock-ish to probably 9 o'clock-ish. I'm going to do Zap 64 Issue 1 Part 2 because I basically ran out of time on Sunday and I actually really enjoyed the stream. I think a lot of people enjoyed it. It was great being able to read the magazine together. It was awesome being able to play all these really good games. So yeah, 7 o'clock-ish to 9 o'clock on Sunday. Listen, thanks to all your support. Thank you to all the really kind people that have chucked a few quid my way. It is appreciated. Like I said, I'm going to put any money I get. I was looking, I got my... Yeah, it's £32 a month is what I pay at the moment for my streaming software and podcast software. So if I can get money to cover that, that would be absolutely wonderful. Anything extra is going to go, I'm going to put it towards a decent webcam. Not a webcam, a decent camera for doing stuff like this. I think it's about 600 quid this camera, so it might take me a few years to get it, but that's what I'm going to do with if I get any spare money, I'm going to put it towards a camera. So anyway, thanks to all the support, all the comments, all the positive comments, some negative as well, but you know what, I do know for a fact that there are a few people that are not happy with me going down the monetised route, but you know what, that's their problem. It's their problem. I know I'm doing nothing wrong. I'm not charging anybody anything. It's all down to people who want to do it voluntarily. So I know I'm doing nothing wrong, and I know the people that matter to me, you know, are supporting me, which is just awesome. So anyway, listen guys, I will see you on Sunday at 7 o'clock. Have a fantastic weekend, and as always, thank you very much for watching.